I'm Adrienne Enns, and I welcome you to the Intention Sessions podcast. I want to inspire our most intentional living. In each episode, we'll talk to remarkable individuals who will share their authentic journeys and their insights with us. They're going to remind us that life's complexities can be our greatest teachers, and that intentional living can be expressed in an infinite number of ways. I hope you find some inspiration for your most intentional life right here. Awesome. So today we have Robert Sturman, and I've had to really cut your bio, Robert, because I think it would take up too long. So hopefully I'm doing you justice here, and you can add in everything you want. But Robert's repertoire of photography and projects is vast, rich, and impressive. His work has taken him the world over, capturing beautiful yogis in stunning settings to urban zen in the streets of Manhattan. His work has also taken him to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, to Africa for the Africa Yoga Project, and to capturing inmates in San Quentin prison practicing yoga. Robert has also captured police officers, military personnel, and vets practicing, and most recently, the frontline healthcare workers facing COVID-19. So I met Robert a few years ago at Kripalu, and we were both there for a retreat being put on by New York Yoga and Life magazine. And I was collaborating with them at the time, and Kripalu is also a retail partner of mine. And I only mentioned this because I was like, kind of had my professional brain on and my personal. And Robert, you were about to give this talk about yoga photography. And I was like, that's not relevant to me. Like, my yoga practice is very personal, but nothing fancy. Like, I'm thinking about all of these, incredible Instagram photos that don't exemplify my practice. But I was like, once you started talking, you shared your work and talked about the yoga of seeing, and I've since become familiar with your work, I just realized, that I'd made this snap judgment. And I love it when my judgments are wrong, and they're wrong all the time. So I'm always learning, but your work is so beautiful and raw and human. And there's just this incredible compassion to it. And I think it also teaches us about not judging because, maybe some of your subjects wouldn't be the first kinds of people that we would associate with yoga. So I'm so happy you're here to talk to us about yourself and your life and your work. And I wondered if you wanted to start by talking about the yoga of seeing. What does that really mean?
Well, first of all, Adrienne, thank you for having me, and that was a beautiful introduction, and I really appreciate that I just made the COVID-19 pieces within the last 3 days, and you've already added it to my bio. So thank you for getting me up to date with everything. I appreciate it.
I just love the way you capture things. So yeah.
Thank you. So the yoga of seeing, it's let me see if I can just really narrow it down, but my development of this philosophy started when I was younger, and I was using a process of photography that was a Polaroid technique. Now, this was when the Polaroid cameras, the image would just come right out of the camera right after you press the shutter. So what would happen was you wouldn't take a lot of pictures because they were expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So with this process, what I did was right when it came out of the camera, I would warm it in the sun and then use a carving technique to create a very painterly photograph. And this is before Photoshop was invented, so I really had to pay attention. because the film was very, let me say, temperamental,
Hmm.
and it wasn't easy to make images sing and dance. And you had to really be present because we hadn't invented that saying, I'll fix it later in Photoshop. So, what it taught me to do was really be present and pay attention and not subscribe to the philosophy that if maybe if I take 1,000, push the shutter 1,000 times, I might just get lucky and get one. That never felt very, how should I say that? Very sniper like to me, where I wanted to be present and in my knowingness and really be with what was in front of me so that when I pressed the shutter, I would feel confident that I got what I wanted and I'd be able to walk away with that and not guess and not take 1,000 pictures with the hopes of getting one. And that was the beginning of my journey into the yoga of seeing. And it developed into a lot more than that. And really, the core of it is to pay attention and to care. To care is the core of it. This really has nothing to do with photography. Photography is just the metaphor for all of this stuff. And yes, we can make beautiful images and use the camera to do that, but ultimately it's an act of paying attention to other people. And I learned that when I first started going into the prison system, that it really didn't matter that I had a camera in my hand, and the people that I was photographing that were serving life sentences were never going to see the photographs, didn't ask to see what was in the camera, but the real gift was in the human connection and paying attention and acknowledging another human being that they're worthy of being here. And that I noticed was the common thread, the common denominator of all the people that I worked with, whether they were a person that frequented the covers of magazines or a person serving a life sentence. And that's really what the yoga of seeing is really just about caring and paying attention.
It's so remarkable to me because I was looking at those photos. The ones in the prison really strike me because, well, it's mainly men that I've seen you photograph. They're, you know, they look rough, and yet when they're practicing yoga, there's this peacefulness and this beauty and this rawness. And to exactly what you're saying, it also takes a certain kind of person, to even be willing to go into that kind of setting and really be present with them. Like, what does that feel like to you?
I love it because I'm working with people that are a reflection of myself, the serious, sincere part of myself that's not screwing around. It's easy to get lost and have a lot of distractions and but when I'm working with these people that really cherish that hour a week that they get to do their practice and to create more space, find more space so that they can survive and live and have a better existence and process emotions and the difficulties it is to be alive and the unimaginable difficulties that it is to be imprisoned and have all of your freedom taken away from you. So when I'm with people like that, I just feel immensely inspired to be a better human being and to not screw around and waste my own life in my privilege.
It's amazing. And I think it reminds all of us, right? Like look at some of those photos where they're behind bars, and I think, through their yoga practice, they're probably freer, than some of us, where, as you say, when we're just distracted and not really present, it's just missing the whole point.
Right, right. Yes, yes. And you ask why it's not that it seems more serious than it is, but this is a yoga class. I'm not going on death row. It's not the movies. Um, it's just an exchange of energy, and it's no different than like what you're doing right now. You're doing something extraordinary. You're paying attention to another person, and you're being interested rather than trying to be interesting. So it's the core of it to just be interested in others and care.
I totally agree. And then also, I love how you bring those images, though, to all of us so we can, see these people and all people in a different way because there are all many facets to all of us. So tell us about like what the work you have been doing in the last few days.
Well, in the last few days, we're all facing, the very real, sobering seriousness of this is very sad.
Mm-hmm.
And the people in my life that have been affected by it, I've had the privilege of photographing, and one of those people is my best friend, who I grew up with, who we've remained extremely close friends and brothers. And he's the one who originally brought me into the prison system because was a prison psychologist, but now he is a suicide and assessment and preventative psychologist at Kaiser, and he's on that force, and it's very intense right now with COVID-19
Mm-hmm.
because people are wanting to end their life. Then that's something that's a very real thing that's occurring right now. So I made a portrait of him in the ER, and another thing is I'm dealing with my father's been dealing with my family has been dealing with my father's lung cancer, amongst many other issues that have come up as a result of that. And he had surgery over a year ago, and it compromised his breathing tremendously because they removed a portion of his lung. And it's just been very hard on my mother and my sisters and I as well, and just the sadness of my father. And I've spent the last couple of years really slowing down my traveling to spend time with him and uplift his spirits, and do my best to give him more hope and support my family in that way. And then this thing happens where he's, at the highest risk, and if he gets it, he's definitely going to die. He's not going to be able to survive it. And he told me that the other day, and I saw him for the first time in about 3 weeks, because they've been under extreme quarantine. I saw him outside with the mask and the gloves on, and I did a portrait of him then, right after he cried and told me that he knew that if he got it, he wasn't going to survive it. And he's 83 years old. So it was a very moving moment. But what I really wanted more than anything, I mean, obviously, to support him, but it's been in the back of my heart, the front of my heart. Like, as an artist, how can I capture this feeling, this global feeling of terror, fear, tiredness, the tiredness and despair of our fragile elders. And I was able to make one of the pieces of my entire life, the most moving pieces, and it happened to be of my father. And it embodied the collective of how uncertain we are, how tired we are, how crazy this is, and just how depleting the potential is. And so that's what I'm doing. And that's what art is. Art is living your life and with sincerity, and allowing that that life, the art, be an expression of the life that's already lived. And so it really surprised me that right in front of me were COVID-19 supermodels, that really represented so much of what's happening.
Yeah, I only laugh because COVID-19 supermodel sounds like an oxymoron,
I
but you're
know.
so right.
I know. It's yeah, right.
And also, well, just when you're talking about your dad, I'm getting a little teary over here. And um, when I was preparing for this, I was checking out your website again, which I pour over often anyway, because I just love it. But it's just reminding me that I think it said on there, and you can tell me if I've got any of this wrong, but I think your dad gave you your first camera. And if I remember correctly, he asked or you asked him, like, what do I take pictures of? And he
Right.
said, everything that you love. And just seems very full circle.
Yeah, that's right. Full circle. That's the truth. And just making that photograph of him. But yeah, that's the core of it, you know. And Marc Chagall was is a great influence to me. I don't know if you know his work. He was a painter.
I do. I love his work.
Yeah. Um, and he said, if I create from my head, nothing works. If I create from my heart, everything works.
Yeah. And I think the other thing when I had noted that down, you had also quoted Rumi, who I also love, and the quote, I can't stop pointing to the beauty.
Yes. Yeah, it's such a beautiful sentence. And it's the beauty in prison, the beauty with the military wanting, the beauty is just obviously the beauty, how beautiful this place is, this world, this planet, but also in people's desire to be better. That's truly
Hmm.
remarkable and beautiful.
And I just think it's important and beautiful right now because, as you said, in us getting so distracted, I think it's hard for people to sometimes pause and be present and see the beauty when they're so enveloped in fear and chaos. So being able to extract that is really valuable. Where do you think, is there something that, I don't know, you grew up with or that happens? Like, what helps you to see that beauty?
Oh wow. I don't know what, I never thought about that. I just, somewhere along the line, I started to feel more, and that's what it was. I guess just wanting to connect and experience the world through the heart. Yeah,
So that's amazing. And I'm curious, like, what is like one of your, like, do you have a story or a couple stories about some of the photographs that you've taken that, just really, I'm sure that they all have a place in your heart, but, are there a few that come to mind that there's just a story behind that you'd want to share?
sure. Here's an interesting one. So, as I mentioned earlier, when I did this Polaroid process, which was a very brilliant integration of painting and photography without using paint or Photoshop. It was just the pigment of the film that I carved into immediately after I made the photograph, after it came out of the camera. And this process took me all over the world. And I was an artist. What I would do is just go to different places and then come back and sell the work that I would do as prints, and just with this growing body of work. And this was, there were two things that happened on this particular trip to Europe, where I spent a good amount of time in Italy. Um, the first thing that happened was I was it was very hot, so I would spend, in the middle of the day, I would go into museums and churches and sit and really relax. And this is gonna, after hearing your talk, this is gonna resonate with you tremendously as well. But so, and it might sound like I'm going off course, but I'll bring it back. So,
I trust you.
thank you. So what happened was, I looked around and I saw all these wonderful artists in this particular room. I think I could have been at the Musée d'Orsay, or I'm not sure, the Pompidou, but no, not the Pompidou. That was in Paris, somewhere in Italy. Okay,
Got it.
and I looked around and I saw all of these artists that were were no longer with us because it was the 1800s and early 1900s that they were working. And then I realized that their work was being guarded with just in these multi-million dollar structures with security guards and these just extravagant buildings, and the work was worth millions and millions of dollars. And then I thought about it, and the one of the common things about these artists is that they lived lives of desperation and self-destruction. So I thought, well, why? That doesn't make sense that their work is cherished and taken such good care of, but they didn't take care of themselves. So that was definitely an aha moment that would start me on a path of rewriting the story of what it meant to be an artist,
Yes.
and that you could create from a place of joy, and embrace meditation and yoga, and it come from that place rather than a self-destructive desperate place, which is really, Adrian, what I was ideologically conditioned to do,
Yes.
and because those are all my heroes.
So fascinating.
you know
Yeah.
then what happened was, on that trip, from there I went to Venice. And when I got to Venice, it was part of the journey where I might have been feeling a little lonely, and the weather was hot, and so I got this room, and it was above like a disco, and it was loud all night, and there was fluorescent lighting in the room, and just the whole thing just had a dark vibe, and mosquitoes, and I barely slept the whole night. And then when I woke up in the morning, I just started walking. I made up my mind that I was just going to go make art no matter what. I was just going to make the most incredible piece of art, or a few pieces of art. And I just started wandering through Venice, and I didn't read the book and know where everything was, and all that. So I ended up at this, after a couple miles of wandering through the streets, I ended up at this place that had thousands and thousands of chairs that were scattered all over the places it was like a Sunday morning or something, and everybody got wasted the night before, and so the place was just chaos. And it was this big square that I'd never heard of or seen, and there were pigeons, and it was an interesting place, and so I looked at it for a long time, at these chairs, and I I I knew that there was a perfect composition in there somewhere. And I studied it for a long time, and I made, a couple of exposures. It wasn't a sniper moment where I could just make one. I mean, this is a very complex puzzle. And so I did that. And then I sat down at one of the tables, and I looked at the picture, and then I warmed it up because I had to warm it up in order to be able to carve into it. And I worked on it for a couple hours at this table. And then I looked at it, and it was the most beautiful thing I ever saw in my life. It was so perfect. It was a unity of chaos and order. And I started to cry because
Wow.
I knew that I was I was worthy of being part of the lineage of artists of our world. And it was that moment. That there were many moments in my career at the beginning where I had little moments like that, but that was a pivotal moment where I really felt like I belong as an artist, and I just felt connected to Michelangelo, and it was a beautiful moment. And then later I realized that that was San Marco Square.
Wow. Amazing. That is incredible. And I just think of all the things that you've been sharing, like the unity and the chaos is just such a central theme to so many
Yeah.
things, right? Do you have that picture up? I don't think
It
I've seen that
it is
picture.
it's under early work. It's the last portfolio on my website, but I'll give it to you for the oh, I don't know how, okay, you don't, for wherever you post this, if you need to put some pictures. But it's in
Okay.
there. It's the green
I
chairs, San Marcos Square.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Do you have another story? Your stories are good. Do you have another story
Oh,
for
I
us?
can go on forever. Let's think. Okay. Well, one of the first times I went into a prison, uh, I was a little timid, and these guys they know everything about you before when they just glance at you and they read you and know everything about you. And here I am, this photographer artist guy. So, anyways, this I go in and it's in a chapel at San Quentin, and they're setting up and everything, and I'm a little nervous because I haven't done the prisons that much, and I've watched a lot of television shows and documentaries and all that kind of stuff. So this one dude that was way back in the corner, that he just like looked at me, an African American gentleman, and he looked at me with a real mean face, and he said, "Hey, photographer man, come back here." And so I started walking back there, and then he looked at me when I got close, and then he pointed to both sides of his both cheeks, and he said, "Yo, make sure to get my good side," like that. So
I was saying I would be of like shaking and sweating, like, I love it. I hope you did. Did
oh
you get his
yeah,
good
we made
side?
the best work together. But that broke the ice, and you know what? I realized that what really is true, no matter who I'm working with, whether it's a breast cancer survivor or someone serving life sentence, in how serious and tragic and the agony and the ecstasy that you might see in the images, underneath it all, there's always laughter. There's always laughter, and I believe that that's the way in. And he showed me that day.
I think you're right. It's amazing. And while we're on it, because I thought about it at an earlier point when we were talking, could you say a little bit about and I will also make sure this is linked out, but your pictures of breast cancer survivors, because those are so powerful too.
Yeah, wow, that's really been an extraordinary journey because it all started with just a woman about 8 years ago named Ulati who had just finished chemo or was still in chemo. And and we connected, and I was in Woodstock doing shoots, and I invited her to come to where I was to do a shoot, and we did this beautiful shoot and it was all new territory to me. I didn't know where we were going. I just knew that I was drawn to it and to
Mhm.
allowing my lens to be a voice for her, just like my camera is a voice for the human beings in the prison system. And so we did this. I was really, I didn't, the one of the things about being an artist is we just never know, and oftentimes it's a once in a lifetime situation, opportunity. You may never see the person, so you want to do a good job always.
Mhm.
And so we did this beautiful series, and it showed me that it was about scars are beautiful, reclaiming our dignity, being vulnerable in the most beautiful way that it gives others permission to do the same. And it was a moment where I realized that the camera could do that with the right intention. And so what happened was, like with most of my series, is then when I release them to the world, they go on living a life of their own. And then more and more
Yeah.
breast cancer survivors would come to me for me to tell their story. And the interesting thing about it is just about 2 weeks ago, or no, 2 months ago, I worked with the first two people that I had worked with 8 years ago. I worked with them back to back on like a Sunday and a Monday 2 months ago, 8 years later, where they were both just healed with so much joy, full, long hair. Everything had transformed. And we made portrait.
Wow. It's amazing. And also just because you don't know if you're going to have that
You never
opportunity.
know.
You don't take it in the first place to have a before and
Right.
after. So to have this, I don't want to call it a conclusion because it's not really that, but I don't know what you would call it,
Right.
but just this for this healing, this beautiful healing, because yeah, the pictures that with the scars, you do just see such incredible, dignity and just moving through life on life's terms. And it's very powerful.
And it's an honor. I definitely feel the honor. That's the one thing that I hope to never lose, is that awe, that gratitude to have the opportunity to do things, to be here right now, being paid attention by you and your audience. I mean, it's such a privilege.
And it's an honor, down the line for, your subjects to share in the way they do. And then the way you capture it, it feels like an honor to also look at those photographs because you can see the vulnerability and the sharing, and for somebody to be willing, to share that part of the human
Yeah.
experience and for you to witness it and capture it, to be, part of that circle is also very like makes me grateful and humbled and all of the
Yes.
things.
Yes. I'll tell you one more story, okay? Well, there could be more, but
That
you
would be
like
great.
stories. So, and this, right.
Yes.
So this I just said that the about artists wanting to do a great job. I just, this might not happen again. So where years ago, I was the official artist for the Grammy Awards, doing the Polaroid work that I did, and I did their official piece in 2005 of a blues man walking proud with a guitar slung over his shoulder and a Grammy in one hand. So I did that, and I really was involved in music for a while, and then I was asked by BB King to do his 80th birthday commemorative portrait. So I
Wow.
drove down to uh, Palm Springs area or wherever he was doing. He was on tour that evening, and I went on to to the bus. Told them I was there, and they said, "Okay, go to the bus." And so that's where he would live and tour, on his bus. And so I went, and I was a huge BB King fan. It's the first record I ever bought was live in Cook County Jail. So that was like when I was 12 years old, hearing all these prisoners screaming, and it was my first experience with prison. And
I
so
love it.
so when I got on the bus, the first thing, so I went to the back, and you can imagine I was a little nervous because I'm on BB King's bus. And so I go to the
Yeah.
back, and we start talking. And he says to me, "Do you need anything for the portrait?" And I said, maybe let's do how about a guitar? And so he screams, what was his bus manager's name? I don't know what is, like Willie, maybe. Willie, bring me Lucille. I mean, and I just that was the coolest moment ever. So, anyways, we're working together, and he's playing and just talking, and then he says, "Did you get it yet, son? Are you happy with what you got?" And I said, "Almost, Mr. King, almost got it." And he looked at me, and he said, "This is the greatest thing anyone's ever said." He said, "Son, that's the trouble with us artists. We always think we can do a better job."
It's true. How amazing.
Yeah, that was cool.
How amazing. I'm going to share all of I remember reading about that too. So where can people, like, we'll send them to your website. Like, where's the best place for people to check out your work and what projects you're working on, what you're up to?
Well, the website's a good place to go to to learn more about me, and to if people wanted to collect the work. But Instagram is or Facebook is a wonderful place just to keep up to date with daily offerings of new work. It's an ongoing gallery. It's I trained for many years painting and drawing and writing in sketchbooks to be prepared for the day when a thing called social media was invented, to be able to unleash, heartfelt, light work into the world that didn't have my own baggage attached to it.
I love it. I love your Instagram feed. It's very, well, it's your work, which I love, but personal, and yeah, all of the anecdotes are amazing.
Thank you.
So we'll make sure that's all there. And I want to ask you one final question. You've kind of answered it many times here, but just in this moment, what brings you the most joy?
Stillness, which is amazing because that's what the majority of the world is asking to be.
It's true. And what about the stillness brings you the joy? Like, where's the joy and stillness for you?
Just being enchanted with the simplicity, just the sound of the freeway in the far distance, or the wind through the trees, or the birds. Just that simplicity, and just the simple gift of being able to just breathe. Yeah, that's it.
Beautiful. That's it.
That's it. 'Cause right now, there's no future. Like, I don't have any plans for the rest of my life. Do you?
No, that's like when we were scheduling this. I literally was laughing out loud as we were texting back and forth. It's like, yeah, let's do it. We have
I
no
know.
plans.
You're like, well, what are some good days? And I was like, well, actually, I don't have any plans, anything on the schedule for the rest of my life. So it's up to you. And, I'm not ashamed of it because most people are in the same boat.
We're all in the same boat. Robert, I just want to say thank you so much for your time today, for your amazing artistry. We're going to send everybody to take a look. And I just look forward to everything else you create. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And hey, for all your listeners, go to Adrienne's website and watch her talk about addiction.
We'll send them there.
It's incredible. She's a true inspiration. You are an inspiration.
Thanks, Robert. Thank you for listening. May some of the wisdom shared here inspire your most intentional living. For more information about this episode, this podcast, intentional living, and my work in the world, please visit mayyouknowjoy.com. You can also find my May You Know Joy and Seeds of Intention cards there, and my book, Intentional Days. You'll also find details for the Intentional Days membership, where you can gain access to a thriving community of intentional souls and lots of regular inspiration. I've got you covered. Until next time, I wish you great joy and many intentional days.